What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about 3 of the safest wide receivers that you guys could be looking to target in your fantasy football drafts this year. So in fantasy, everyone values players for different things. Some people, they really like the high upside. They'll take on some risk to have that crazy high ceiling. Other times, people like the safety. They like the reliability at different positions. Maybe you've already made some risky picks early on in your draft. You want some security here at the wide receiver position. So for these wide receivers, these are going to be guys going outside the top 12. If you're picking a wide receiver in the top 12, I mean, they should be pretty safe, right? They should have a very high weekly floor. I'll have floor for the ceiling because you're spending a premium pick on them. So these are going to be guys that are going as wide receiver 2s or later that I do think are just really secure options this season. So let's dive right into the first one here, and it is going to be Jaylen Waddle. And Jaylen Waddle's pretty much been like the definition of consistency through his first 3 NFL seasons. In 2021, he was the wide receiver 15 in points per game, averaged 15.4 points per game. 2022, averaged 15.3, was the wide receiver 12. And then in 2023, average 14.2 was the wide receiver 21. He's currently being drafted as the wide receiver 18, just like a mid-tier wide receiver 2. And I think what's interesting about Waddle is he's found multiple ways to deliver fantasy production in his 3 seasons. So in his rookie year, he was used like a target hog. He wasn't like this super efficient option. It was when the offense wasn't great. He was the clear top weapon, and they just funneled him targets. He was 10th in the NFL in targets as a rookie. Then the next season, when you had Tyreek Hill added, Mike McDaniel came in, he produced through efficiency. He was 1st in yards per target and 1st in yards per reception. He was 4th in yards per route run. And then he also, was fairly efficient last year. Not quite as crazy as in 2022, but still a very solid option. Wasn't used like a target hog like he was in his rookie year. There's absolutely zero concern about Jaylen Waddle's age. He's 25 years old, should probably still be getting better at this point. Not like a risky option who's potentially falling off the age cliff. Then he also really has had nothing changed up in his offense, nothing crazy. He still has Tua there at quarterback. The coaching staff is the same. Tyreek Hill's still there. He's locked in as the wide receiver 2. When you look at his ADP, it seems like you might actually be getting his safety at a little bit of a discount. Like I said, he's being drafted as the wide receiver 18. He's finished as a back-end wide receiver 1 year, a high-end wide receiver 2 in another year, and then a back-end wide receiver 2 last year. So it seems like he has pretty decent odds of finishing better than this wide receiver 18 spot, or at worst, like just a few spots below it. And I think you're kind of getting that discount because his ceiling does seem a little bit capped. If Tyreek Hill is healthy, it's going to be tough to see Jaylen Waddle being any better than like a very back-end wide receiver 1, where he's like wide receiver 10 to 12 territory. If Tyreek Hill's healthy, like he's not going to be a mid to high-end wide receiver 1 option. If Tyreek Hill were to miss time, then I think Waddle could be like a mid-tier wide receiver 1 play week to week, but that's not really what we're betting on here, right? He's a safe option. He can be the wide receiver 2, still give you nice wide receiver 2 production, and that's why I think he's a very secure option this year. Now, shifting over to my next safe wide receiver, it's going to be Michael Pittman, and he's being drafted as the wide receiver 19. In the last 3 seasons, he's been the wide receiver 14, wide receiver 21, and wide receiver 22 in points per game, and he's averaged between 13.5 and 15.6 points during those 3 seasons. He's coming off his best fantasy season of his career last year. He set career highs in targets, receptions, and receiving yards. And typically when wide receivers are able to command targets at a high level, they come with a lot of safety, both like week to week and just throughout the entire year. If you're heavily targeted, it's very likely you're going to be producing. And Michael Pittman is one of those guys. Last year, he was 8th in targets per game. He was 4th in target share. Shane Steichen made it a focal point to get Michael Pittman involved, get him a lot of opportunities. Just like I talked about with Jaylen Waddle, very young. He's 26 years old. Definitely not falling off any sort of age cliff. I think one potential area of concern would be the quarterback position. Gardner Minshew, he was the guy that was, leading this offense for most of last season. I really like Anthony Richardson for fantasy purposes, but that doesn't necessarily mean he translates to like a top NFL passer. The Colts also could go more pass heavy this season with Richardson at quarterback, but I just don't think they want to run Anthony Richardson into the ground, especially with the injury problems he had last year. I think they're going to want to preserve him a little bit. Obviously, they're still going to have him use his legs, but I don't think this is going to be like a crazy low volume offense like with the Falcons we saw a couple years ago. I think the Bears were in a similar spot 2 years ago. Like, I don't think it's going to be that bad. And it's also not like the Colts were top tier in passing metrics last year. They were 20th in passing yards, 25th in passing touchdowns. I think even if, there's not going to be quite as much passing volume, I think Richardson overall just gives this offense a much higher ceiling. And Pittman has been a reliable option even without hitting in the touchdown department. He has 15 total touchdowns in his first 4 seasons, and his career high is 6. So he hasn't been hitting in the touchdown department, and he's still been a solid wide receiver too. So now, maybe he gets a little bit fortunate. 7, 8, 9 touchdowns, you're looking at someone who, could be flirting with wide receiver 1 production. So I fully expect Michael Pittman to be a very solid, safe wide receiver 2. I like this Colts offense. He's their clear top weapon. And then maybe he even has some added upside in there. But safety-wise, I feel very secure with Michael Pittman this year. And then my final safe wide receiver is going to be Devonte Smith, and he's currently being drafted as a back-end wide receiver 2, the wide receiver 23. And in his last 2 seasons, Devonte Smith has averaged 15 and 14.2 PPR points per game. That's been the wide receiver 14 and the wide receiver 20 in points per game. He's just been very, very steady over those 2 seasons, 1,000+ receiving yards in both, 7 touchdowns in both. 25 years old, should still be getting better, could just now be entering his prime. And I think he's in a pretty similar situation to Jaylen Waddle. There were minimal changes made to this Eagles offense. The ceiling is going to be capped playing behind A.J. Brown, but he just seems like pretty much a lock to give you that wide receiver 2 production. And then he also gives you that extra upside if A.J. Brown were to go down. And then just like I talked about with Waddle, I think you're kind of getting his safety at a little bit of a discount, right? Because last 2 seasons, like I said, he was a high-end wide receiver 2 and then a mid-tier wide receiver 2. You're drafting him as a back-end wide receiver 2 because people don't think he has the upside to jump into the top 12, but everything is the same around him. So if you just want, a reliable option, you can draft him, throw him in there as your wide receiver 2. I think Devonte Smith is a great option for that, and you're getting him, on some platforms, maybe as a high-end wide receiver 3. So those are going to be my 3 safest wide receivers here going outside the top 12. We had Jaylen Waddle, Michael Pittman, and Devonte Smith. Guys who I just think have proven it year after year. They're in, very secure situations, on proven offenses. So that's why I think those guys are nice options. So let me know your thoughts on these players. Are there any other wide receivers that you guys view as very safe? Let me hear it down below. But thank you all for stopping by. I'll have my running backs out tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. But thank you again, and I will see you in the next one.